Hi there, I'm Carla,
And I'm Melanie.
and we're the board game specialists. And today we are talking all about push your luck games. But before we do that, Melanie, what have you been playing this week?
So this past week, I've played a few games on Sunday for Screenless Sunday with the kids. We ended up playing a few older games, actually, Mastermind,
Nice.
where you put like these little color pieces and you're trying to figure out what the person has chosen for their color combination. And it's interesting because you'll put like four different color, I don't know, like peons, whatever it's called, and then they pull they pull on the side to kind of show if it's the right color in the right spot or the right color in the wrong spot, and trying to figure out what the combination is. So we played that a few times. Then I played Cribbage with Lee, which is, a game I grew up on. So that's a traditional card game where you peg on a board, and it's such a great game. I got Res Publica off my shelf of shame, which is Reiner Knizia game, I do believe. And it's interesting because it's, you know what, it almost reminds me of the trading portion of Catan, but that's it. You collect cards and then you trade your cards trying to make the combination that you want. It's like a pure trading game. I purchased and played Cascadia, which was actually a great game. Like, it feels like you're doing two puzzles. You're doing the base puzzles where you're putting the land together, and you're doing the top puzzles with the creatures or the animals you're putting on top and trying to come up with the optimal combination. So that one was great. And then this was it on Thursday, me and Lee ended up playing Chronicles of Crime, which is like one of my most favorite whodunit game. Like, it's so well designed. It plays as an app, like it's app based. So, but like, you take your phone and you scan the location to go to the location. If you run into somebody, it'll tell you. Then you can scan the individuals that are there to talk to them, and then you can scan the different things that you want to talk to them about, and you can scan other people and say, well, what do you know about this person? Like, it is so neat. I really love Chronicles of Crime. And that's pretty much all I've played this week. What about you?
Well, I've been kind of delving into some of Uwe Rosenberg's older games. I have quite a few, but I played At the Gates of Loyang.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever played that one?
Don't know that I've played. Like, it's one that I've kind of looked at, picked up, put it back. It's like, do I want this? I don't know. But it seemed interesting.
Yeah, it's a little different than his other ones. It has a bit of a farming theme because you are still planting crops and harvesting from them, but that's it. There's no animals. So you have all these crops in front of you, and every round you get to turn over a new empty crop, and then you get to harvest a vegetable from each of your crops that are already planted. And then what you need to do is deliver those to customers. And there's a card play in it as well. So I've only played it as a two-player game or solo, but with the card play, you start with four cards each, and then you can flip a card from the deck and either choose from that market, or if you choose to wait, you will play one of your cards into the market, and then the other person will go. And you can build up the market that way. But what the cards are basically four different things. So you either get a casual customer, a regular customer, a new field, or a helper. And the helpers are just kind of little assistants that'll give you special powers to cheat the system a little bit. But you do need to fill these orders. So if it's a casual customer, you have to fill that order that round, or that customer will become angry. And it's fine if it just stays angry the one time, but if you don't fulfill it next round, then you'll have to pay a penalty. And there's usually about 5 times you can fulfill that order. And then just regular customers you can fulfill them anytime. They can sit there as long. And so you'll get money for these customers when you fulfill the orders. Oh, there's also one other card. It's like called your market card. So it's just something that sits on the side, and you put 3 vegetables on it, and you can trade up other vegetables for it, each one of those, in case you need a different one than what you're harvesting. But the whole point of the money is you, at the end of the round, you have to buy your points. So you move up this track, and the first one is always $1, and then the next one is depending what number it's at. So if you've moved up one spot, like the first time, then the next point you'd have to pay 2. And the next round you'd move up 1 to 3, and then you'd have to pay 4. So the end of the game is basically whoever's moved up farthest on that track. So there's no scoring. It's just get as far up on that track as possible. Use your cards wisely and try to fulfill as many orders as possible. It's quite different, but it's really neat. I really like it.
That sounds neat.
Yeah. Also, I've been playing Hallertau. That's his newer one, but another farming game that you just are manipulating different fields and crops, trying to push over your community building, which has all these different little buildings in front of it that you're trying to slide over by giving them different vegetables and grain and rye and whatnot. But there's also card play in that one as well. And those cards can like change up the game so much, because sometimes you'll have a hand of cards that you're never going to be able to fulfill these till nearly the end of the game. And other ones, you'll just flip up a card and you're like, oh, I have that right now, fulfilled. And then it gives you other like jewelry or tools. And tools are important because they will actually push over these little boulders that are in front of the community hall. So that helps you slide over your buildings. And the jewelry is like just a wild resource, and that will actually fulfill one whole building to slide over, where in some rounds it could take you actually 5 resources to do. So that one's really neat. That's another one of my favorites of his right now. But the other game that I've been playing is called Bumuntu. So this one is kind of an abstract strategy one, but with a bit of a theme. You have all these animals. They're just square tiles on this grid on a board. And there's 10 animals in the game, and you'll choose 8 out of the 10. So you'll just randomly place all these tiles, and then each of you will place one of your little pawns to start on one of the animals. So what you do is you're going to move according to the animal you're on. So they each have different moves. So say I'm on the lion, and he says you can move 3 straight in a row. So I will move 3 straight in a row, and I'll collect the lion, the one that I started on, and I'll put it behind my shield. Now, there's different things on the tiles. Could be like food you could collect, and that would give you 1 extra movement before you start your main movement. Or there's like a little mask, which is basically a set collection at the end of the game. If you have so many of them, you get so many points. There's also a little cross that whoever has the most of those will get a certain amount of points, second amount of points. But there's also this scoring board, which is really neat, because some of the tiles have like a dark background, and those will let you adjust scoring tiles. So you have this board with all the animals listed on it, and beside them is a scoring factor. So one could be 2 points for each zebra, if the zebra was in that section. Another one could say 7 points for whoever has the most, 3 for whoever has the second most. But these tiles can be flipped or switched with one above or below it. So you can adjust all the scoring throughout the whole game. So you could be collecting certain animals, and then people are switching those tiles and messing up your scoring system. So there's 4 of these dark background tiles in each of the animals. And once those are all off the board, then the game ends. But it's neat how you're switching these tiles back and forth, because you're going for this one animal, trying to get as many as possible, and then someone flips the tile and the scoring is completely different. It's quite a neat strategy game, but changes up like round to round. And it's very pretty. Nice thick tiles, really nice little African art on all the animals. It was one I got used. I bought out of Calgary, and I think I paid maybe $20 for it. And when I went to pick it up, it was still in shrink.
Oh, nice. Don't you love that?
It's one of those. But anyway, let's start with our number 9.
Before we start with our top 9 list, I just want to bring up, like, I'm part of the FalCon group. And this week I've been, like, so over the moon with board games and stuff because FalCon has announced their con. This is going to be at the end of August. And then Gobfest in Edmonton has announced theirs at the end of May, and I've purchased my badge, and we're actually both going to that one.
Yeah.
And then also each year I do I call it a Melcon for my birthday, which is at the end of June. And this year I've rented the hall. I actually just finished buying the lanyards and then the tag, like the card holders or whatever, to kind of put name tags and an official Melcon badge. And so we've got like these 3 cons all lined up for this year, and I'm just so excited. And I was kind of like, okay, everything board game now. And
yeah, that's
so
awesome.
Just thought that was worth mentioning. Like, game cons are finally back.
I know, can't wait.
Oh my god, I'm so excited.
Yeah. I will be attending all those as well. Plus, there's a 1-day one in Calgary in 2 weeks. I think it's called Calgary Tabletop on April 2nd. That they are actually kickstarting.
Can't do, unfortunately, I'm working that Saturday. But yeah, that's kind of neat the way they did it, where you go on Kickstarter to kind of purchase and reserve your spot on it. And yeah, so but you're attending that one,
That one too, yeah. Well, and if they do get enough ticket spot, they're going to extend it to Sunday as well and have another day of it. So, yeah.
So yeah, it's exciting time for board gaming in Alberta.
Yes, finally.
Yes.
All right, so
let's get in our list now.
What is your number 9?
So my number 9 for Push Your Luck is King of Tokyo. King of Tokyo is a game that was published in 2011 by Richard Garfield, and it was published by Yellow. This was the first game that my brother gifted me that kind of started the whole board game thing for me. And what's neat with this one is everybody plays as a different monster, and we're attacking and destroying Tokyo. To win, you either need to be the last monster standing or to have collect 21 victory points, or their star. I'm not sure if they're called victory points, but it's you have a dial that you collect the stars on. Now, some of the way that you collect the stars is you can roll dice, because it is like a dice battle Yahtzee style thing. So you roll the dice, and if you get like 3 of the same numbers, and you get that many stars that you can add to your score. And there's always one monster that is inside Tokyo. And this is where the pushing your luck comes in, because when you are in Tokyo, if you roll any attack, then you attack all the monsters that are outside of Tokyo. But every other monster on their turn, while you are inside of Tokyo and their roll attack, they all hit you. And while you're inside Tokyo, you cannot heal, because you can roll hearts and take and heal, but only if you're outside of Tokyo. And the point you would stay in Tokyo for is because when you start your turn in Tokyo, you collect extra victory points. So it has that every time you take a hit, you get to decide, okay, do you stay in Tokyo? Do you get out of Tokyo? There's so much benefit to staying in Tokyo, but if you die there, it's not. So if you get out of Tokyo, then the other monster has to move in. So it has that, do I stay? Can I last long enough with the health that I have, or should I pull out? And it's an interesting game. It's a lot of fun. This is probably one of Lily's favorite games. She has played this one tons, and for some reason she's got crazy dice luck with this one. She wins almost every time.
Nice.
But that was my number 9, King of Tokyo.
All right, my number 9 is Can't Stop by Sid Saxon. So this one is just a dice roller, and you have 4 dice on your turn. You roll them, and you will take a combination of 2 of the dice. So you can either have, it goes from 2 to 12, and there's a board, and you'll peg up each spot. Like, I think it kind of goes in a tent-like formation, so the 2s and the 12s on the end only have to move up like 3 spots, and then as you go towards the middle, they each have 1 extra spot. So a 7 is like the most commonly rolled thing out of the combination, so you have to move quite far up that one to finish. But all you're doing is trying to move up these little tracks and getting to the end of each number. And if you can get to the end of each number 3 times, you win the game. So what you do is choose a combination, you slide up that spot, and then you put your little kind of like pylon on top, and you can choose to stop and you'll be locked in there. But if you keep rolling, you can just keep moving up more spots until you stop. The thing is, if once you've moved up 3 different numbers and you roll and then don't roll any of those numbers, then you bust and you'll go back all the way down to where you started at the beginning of your turn. It's just a fun, do I keep going? Do I stop, lock myself in, or what to do? I usually just keep pushing my luck, trying to get as many as possible right up as far as I can until there's likely no chance I'm going to roll something. It's one I play on BGA a lot. It takes 5 minutes. You just go back and forth. I think it plays up to 4 players, and that's it. You get to the top 3 times and you win. It
looks good.
Yeah. It was made in 1980. So very old game. Only a few years older than me. But
well, it's funny because that one looks a lot like the horse racing game.
Oh yeah,
and I've played that one a lot, but I've never played the Can't Stop. And then it does look interesting.
This one's a lot faster, but same kind of theory. You're trying to get up that pyramid type of. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now is your number 9.
Yeah.
Perfect. So for my number 8, I've picked Oh My Goods. Published in 2015, Alexander Pfister game, and was published by Lookout Game. And what's neat with that one is like you'll flip, because in this one you're collecting resources and completing an action that you want to do, but you don't have all the full information. So you flip the morning market and it'll show what's available there. And then you have to decide, okay, do I go for the full thing and trying to do as much as I can with this turn, and then you kind of go with your main builder, or do you go sloppy a little bit and kind of send the apprentice where you don't need to have, or like you can be sloppy with your work so you get 1 less resource that's required, and it's kind of okay, no, I don't have what I need there, but I'm hoping it'll come up, and then like I'm gonna push and go for the big action, and then you flip over, and then the sun comes up right away, and then you didn't get what you needed. It's like, it's an interesting decision that you got to do when you're kind of revealing the market, and I think this is such an interesting game.
Yeah, it is neat.
Yeah, so that was my number 8, Oh My Goods.
Nice. My number 8 is called No Thanks by Thurston Gimmier, made in 2004. This is just a simple little card game where you have cards from 1 to 35, I believe. And you'll take out about 7 each game. And all you're doing is you'll flip 1 card and you decide, do I want to take that card? Or if not, then I have to put a chip on it. Then it passes around the table. The next player makes the same decision. Do I take that card or put a chip on? Now, the reason why you wouldn't want to take that card is you might have some cards in front of you, like I might have a 25 and say a 27. And so a 30 comes up. I probably don't want to take it because you're going to count for each card that's in front of you that is not connected to other cards. So if I have that 25 and 27 and I luckily get a 26 and stick that in the middle, I'm only going to count my lowest card of that combination. So it can go around the table quite a bit where there's, 15 chips on the card. And then the other thing is you have to think, well, do I take that 30 even though it has 15 chips, because those 15 chips are also points as well. So I can either keep them and save them and take away points off my score because you want the lowest score, or I can also use them for more power for passing on other cards. It's a real back and forth game deciding what is the best to do, because most times you're still going to end up with like 6-7 cards, and they're not all going to be in a combination. You just want the lowest score. It's quite fun when you play with more people. A 2-player game isn't as interesting because you're just trying to get the best combination and you just keep sticking chips on the cards. But lots of players is really fun, especially when you're down to a couple chips and you're like, oh, I hope a good card comes up, because if a bad one does, you're forced to take it. This is one that we've always taken camping with the kids when they were little. It was such an easy one to teach, easy to learn, and just fun and quick to play.
It is such a great game.
Yeah.
It's a very simple, great game. And then there's also, like, at the start of the round, a random amount of cards get pulled out.
Yeah, 7.
So
7 cards.
you can't always, like, you say, okay, well, I need the 29, but
Yeah,
you don't know. Maybe
you don't
29's pulled out. And yeah, it's really neat. We played this one as a family often.
Yeah.
And it plays well at the 6-player count.
Yes.
And just to kind of see, which of the kid is going to, like, nope, I'm taking it. It's like,
Yeah.
Really? Like, Nick, you got a lot of points. But it's such a great game.
Yeah. That's my number 8.
Perfect. So my number 7 is Tiny Epic Quest. Now, I'm a big fan of the Tiny Epic series. I've got almost all of them. Actually, Tiny Epic Dungeon just showed up here yesterday. That's the latest one that I kickstarted. Now, Tiny Epic Quest was published in 2017. It's designed by Scott Alms, and it's published by Gamelin Games. And this one is really Zelda. Like,
oh,
honestly,
really?
It plays like the Adventure of Zelda. Like, so you have your tiles that you kind of create the board with, and it plays in 2 sections. The first section, you kind of select what movement you want to do to send your workers in different spot on what you want to do. You can go and battle some goblin, and that's going to give you points if you successfully defeat the goblins. You can go and set yourself up at different temples so that you can learn new spells. You can go at different locations where you'll get special like where you can trade for special things or get items and that sort of stuff. So there's all sorts of different things that you can do, and you kind of select the different movements that you want to do, because there's roads that go from side to side. There's rivers that goes up and down. You can travel by griffin, which allows you to go diagonal, or if you go by, I think it's ship, you can go around the outside of the board that you've created. And, one player will decide the movement, then everybody kind of does that same movement. So a little bit like Puerto Rico in that way, where you select and then you all do it. So you kind of go and select all of what you want to do, and you get all your workers set up. And then you go into the night phase. And in the night phase, so depending on what you've got going on, you've got the goblins, you've got the magical spells you're trying to learn and that sort of stuff. But in order to complete those, you got to roll these dice, and then you roll the dice, and depending on the symbol that comes up. So if you get a goblin, it's like, oh, okay, great, I hit the goblin by 1. So you kind of take note of that. Oh, great, I've learned the spell. You get like the magic mushroom. So you go up 1 level towards the spell you're trying to learn. And the spell you pick kind of say, okay, well, this spell is like 3 spots away, so I need to collect a lot of mushroom to make it there. Can I do that spell, or should I go with one that's kind of closer on the chart? And so selecting the spell kind of is a little bit of push your luck. But what's the thing that's neater with that is you stay in the night phase as long as you want, and you roll the dice. But every time there's like a hit that you roll. Now, if whoever's in the night phase with you at the same time, you get the first one, the second player gets 1, and if there's a third one, like you pass on the hits from you to the next players and so on. But as the player's like, okay, no, I've accomplished what I wanted. I'm taking too much hit. I'm pulling out of the night phase. I'm going back to camp. So then if you're by yourself now, or, like there's less players now, the hits are going to come back to you more. So you're going to start taking more hits, but maybe it's like, no, but that magical spells I'm trying to learn is a few more, I need more mushrooms, and you're trying to push for that. And it is very interesting as to like, how long do you stay in that night phase trying to roll these dice, and oh my God, what am I going to roll? Am I going to be okay? And trying to accomplish what you're trying to do and make sure that you get those goblins attacks, so you get the benefit of that, or get enough things so that you get to learn that spell. Because in the end, all of like how much you've accomplished in each track is how far you got in each track is how you score your points at the end of the game. So you're trying to go further, far enough to collect enough points. But so it's such an interesting game. And that is Tiny Epic Quest, my number 7.
Nice. My number 7 is Pandemic the Cure by Matt Leacock. It's made in 2014. So this is a version of Pandemic that uses dice. There's no big map. You just have a circle with numbers 1 to 6 around it. And those are the spots where the dice will go. So you start off the game, I think you roll 6 dice, and whatever numbers they are, you'll place them on those numbers around this little circle. And you each have a player power, just like in Pandemic. But your player power is different because you'll have a certain amount of dice that you will roll each turn, which will either have on it, they'll have a boat, which would let you boat to one spot next to you. So we all start on one of the numbers. The other one would be an airplane, so you could fly to any of the numbers. Then you have a little needle, which is a treat. So you can treat one of the dice that you're sitting on the same spot. There's also one that has a little like bottle. So that would actually, I think it's called sample. Yeah. So you would take a sample. So if you have one of those, you'll take one of those dice, put it in front of you with your sample dice on top of it. Once you collect, say 3 or 4, at the end of your turn, you can roll all the dice you have on top and hope to get over, I think it's 11. And if you do roll over 11, then you will have found a cure for that color. So there's 4 colors, just like in normal Pandemic, and you're trying to cure them all before the end of the game, or before you would have too many outbreaks, which can happen if there's more than 4 dice, I think, on one of the circles. Then you'd have an outbreak and they would spread to the other circles. So each turn you do that, and then at the end you have to pull more dice out of the bag and reinfect. So these circles will start building up with more and more dice. Now the player powers are quite neat too, because they are some of the normal ones, but some different ones as well. And they'll give you different things on your dice that could maybe have like a double treat or a double sample. Some people might be better at rolling because they only, as opposed to 11 or 12 is what you need. It's a really fun game because it can last literally 10 minutes and you could lose, or you can by chance win. Me and my gaming buddy, we play this quite a bit. It's a really good 2-player game. We also I have the expansion, so it adds another, I think, 6 new different player powers that you can play. But it's such an easy setup because you just set up this little circle and throw your dice on and you're ready to go. It's quite fun. Have you played this one?
It is a good one.
Yeah.
It's a neat spin on the Pandemic game, and then that dice checking is so satisfying. It's great pick.
Yeah.
And that was your number 7. Perfect. So for my number 6, I have Diamant, which was also went by the name Ink and Gold. So this one was published in 2005. And this one, like, you're on an expedition and you're in camp, and then you kind of go into the jungle, and as you go on each space, like, you kind of reveal treasures and stuff. And depending on how many players there are, if there's enough to kind of divide among the people, like you divide what you can among the people, but anything that's extra, stay on that space. And then you kind of keep going deeper in the jungle, trying to collect all these treasures. So the deeper you're going to go, the more treasures you're going to get, ideally. And then at the start of the game, like at the start of the round, you kind of secretly select and reveal whether you're pushing further in the jungle or whether you're going back to camp. And if you push further in the jungle, you keep going. But cards gets revealed as well, and then you'll kind of reveal creatures. Now, if you ever reveal, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 of the same creatures, well, then you get attacked by that, and then you bust. So you want to try to push to collect as much treasures as you can, but at one point, okay, no, I'm out. I go back to camp. And when you go back to camp, you travel back and you get to collect the treasures that are left behind. Now, if multiple people go back to camp at the same time, again, if it's not dividable by the amount of people, that treasure gets left behind. So it's like you're pushing, and then say, okay, no, I'm not going back. But 3 other people also decided they're not pushing, they're going back. You go back to camp, but there was like 2 treasure there, 1 treasure there. Then you can't pick those up that you were maybe hoping to pick up. And then you go back to camp. But then what you've collected, that's safe. If you go further, you run, like the opportunity of getting more treasures. But if you ever reveal too many of the same monster, then you bust and you don't get to take your treasures home. You got hurt. And it's an interesting one. Then you have like your little treasure chest that you put things in. Now, I've played a few different versions. My friend Lyle had one that had like treasure chest that you could lift the lid, and like it was neat. So you kind of put in there, and you couldn't see what everybody had because it was all in their own little treasure chest. And the goal is to have the most treasure. And then it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like I've collected quite a bit, but I think Lyle did as well. So I don't know. Did I collect enough? Or so it's like, maybe I'll push more to get more treasures. And oh no, I bust. It's like, so it's an interesting. The one that I have has, and I think it plays like up to 8 players or something like that. So you can play a lot of players, but the one I have has like, it's like foam board that created like this. You fit into each other to create like this little box, but it doesn't have a lid. I don't think it doesn't have a lid, but like you get this thing. It's neat. It is such a neat game. And that was my number 6, Diamant.
Yeah, I like that game. I had that game and tried it out with different groups, and it didn't go over. I liked it, but I was the only one.
Yeah, I played it with Lyle and a couple of friends, and it was amazing. And I found my own copy, and I played it with my kids, and it was meh.
I think it's the group. It's dependent on the group. You gotta have a good group, one.
Yeah.
All right, that was your number 6. My number 6 is Welcome To by Benoit Turpin and made in 2018. And it's basically the whole Welcome To series. The push your luck aspect in this one is you have 3 cards that you're flipping. There's 3 numbers, and once you flip them, then you'll have 3 abilities that will each go with it. So I might have flipped a park and a 7. 7 on my player's sheet, which I have 3 streets in the base Welcome To. And so I might write a 7 down and cross off a park. Then the next time I might get a fence and a 5, so I can put a 5 somewhere on my board and mark a fence somewhere. So when you put a fence on your player's sheet, you are sectioning off areas on your street, which will fulfill some goals. There's 3 different goals that you're trying to kind of race to complete. So one of them might be you need sectioned off a 3 section, a 4 section, and a 5 section. Once you get that, you'll get a certain amount of points, and then that card will flip, and everyone else who completes it after will get a lower amount of points. But the push your luck aspect is you don't know what cards are coming out. So after, about, say, 10 turns or so, you may have already put all your 7s in. And then what comes up is, say, all 7s. Then you're out of luck, and you need to mark off this little area where you can't complete anything that turn. And if you do that 3 times, the game's over. So you're trying to figure out a way to put numbers on these 3 streets, but try to keep open different numbers so that you don't lock yourself out of, a certain amount of numbers, which always seems to happen. Near the end of the game, I'm like, oh, I can't do anything higher than a 7 anymore. Now I need 5 or less. So it's a real push your luck game where you're trying to figure out which numbers to put, but also which numbers to keep open in case they come up. Because again, in this one, like the 7s, there's probably maybe like 6 or 7 cards of those. But then when you go to the lower or real high numbers, so like a 2 and a 14, there's only 2 of those cards coming up. So you have to balance it out and figure which opening spaces you're going to leave just in case those cards come up. It's a fun one that we played over COVID. When the first year that we had COVID, we would play this over Zoom a lot. We actually played it with the company Deepwater Games. There was a girl called Elle. She would actually, over Facebook, she would play this game with, whoever wanted to play, and we'd be playing with 20 different people, and she'd, line up a game or 2 every day. So when we were at home and no one was working, that was kind of our thing. We would just sit in front of this screen and play Welcome to, and have little tournaments and stuff. It was pretty fun. But it's a really good one to play over Zoom because you just need the sheets. And actually, if you have the app, you could just do it on your phone or like a little laptop or something. But this is one of my favorite roll and writes. Welcome to.
Yeah, it is a neat one. And like with flip and writes and roll and writes, like how you can, during the pandemic, all you need to do is see what gets rolled. And then as long as you have the board, you can play however many people. It's neat.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And that was your number 6?
6, yeah.
Perfect. So my number 5 is Broom Service. Mm-hmm. Broom Service was published in 2015. It's created by Andreas Pelikan and Alexander Pfister, and it was published. And this one is such an interesting game. Like, you have this big map, and your little witches, and you go around. Like, it's neat. Like, your token is like a triangle that has like a witch hat on top of it. It looks cute, but it's a pick up and deliver game. Like, you go around collecting what you need for the potions and then delivering it where it needs to go. And what you need to do is at the beginning of each turn, you decide which action you want to do. And you have a deck of cards that'll have so many actions on it, and then you don't get to have all the cards. And when you reveal what action you want to do, you got to decide if you're going to be a brave witch or a coward witch or wizard, whatever. And if you're going to push for the bigger action, you do the action and you're going to push to do like the bigger action, but you need to be the only one that have revealed that card. Now, they might not have that card in their hands at all. And they might not have picked it either. And there's always a card like kind of each round that where there's an action that can't be done as well. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, I think I'm the only one who wants to do this. So I'm going to push for it. I'm going to try to go for it. And then you kind of reveal and it's like, okay, I'm going to be a brave wizard. And then it's like, yeah, well, I was going to do that one as well. And then you push too much so that you don't get to do the action at all. But you could be the coward wizard and do like a portion of it. It's not going to be as impressive of a move. But if nobody reveals it, then you're safe. But then, if somebody else reveals it, you're safe. You still get to do the move. And then you kind of go around and then nobody reveals like, oh, darn it, I should have been brave. And it's a neat decision making in the beginning, kind of like, okay, well, and then like whether as well, like if you're the first one to go, the second one to go, or if you're the last one in the round, like it makes it easier. But it's an interesting mechanism that action decision. Is so neat, kind of unique to Broom Service. So that was my number 5.
Yeah, I really like that one. I always pull that out at Halloween.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's really fun. So that was your number 5. My number 5 is 10 by Molly Johnson, Robert Melvin, and Sean Stankovich, made in 2021. We have talked about this one before. It's literally push your luck. You flip a card, you decide if you want to stop or keep going. So what you want to do is try to get as many face cards as you possibly can, or number cards, I guess they're called. So if I flip a number 6, I can take that or keep going. Now, if I flipped a 5 after that, well, I would have bust, because as soon as you get past 10, you bust. The other thing that could happen is I could flip a currency card. So it's just a card with little dots on it. So say I had initially put a 5 down and then flipped a currency card with 5. Well, that would take off the total of the 5. So I'd be down to 0. So then I could keep going a little further. But the other thing is you can also bust with the currency. So if I had that normal 5 and then a currency 5 and then I pulled another 6 currency, well, I would bust there because I'd have 11 currency. So you all start with 10 black chips. Now, if I were to bust, everybody would get that money, the currency. So they would get to take chips up to the amount of 10, the black chips. I would bust, so I would get nothing, no cards, but I would take a white currency chip, which is worth 3. Now, those I can have as many as I want in my little bank. The black ones, you can only have 10. Now, if I didn't bust, say I pulled a 6 card and then a 3 card, so I could just take those cards. I can also, if I do take the number cards, I can buy a card from the market. And the whole point of doing this is you're trying to just make sets of certain colors. So I think there's 4 or 5 different colors, and you're trying to make a set from 1 to 9. At the end of the game, you'll add up all your sets that you have complete of. So I might only have like from 2 to 5 in one color, and another color I might have 1 to 9. If I have a 1 to 9, I get 1 extra point, so I'd get 10 points. If I only had a 2 to 5, I'd get 2, 3, 4. I'd only get 4 points in that area. So that's all you're doing is trying to make these sets. But deciding if you want to push your luck, because do I want to push my luck and maybe let them fill up all their banks because they all have 0 black chips, or do I just stop, grab my stuff and buy from the market? The other thing is if I choose to say just stop and not take the cards, but I could take the currency as well. So if I had, say, 9 currency out there, I could just stop. Those number cards would go into the market and I could take the currency and fill up. Also, what could come up are some wild cards. So say like a wild 3, which could be any color of 3, could come up, and that will auction off immediately. So the person to my left would start the auction, and they would just bid an amount of chips that they want to bid on that. It goes around till it comes back to me, and I'd have the final bid if I want to purchase that card or not. And those cards you don't have to put in your sets right away, so you can wait till the end of the game to play those and fill up your sets. Have you played 10?
I did. I played it the one time. I did terrible. It was so bad. I had the lowest score by far. But it's so interesting because there's just, it's, you get the deck of cards, you get the chips. There's not much to the game, but there's so much to it when you come to the gameplay. Yeah. It's like, okay, I need to buy from the market. So having chips is good for purchasing because and then having them to bid is good too. But then it's like, oh, did I bust? It's like, oh, but then you flip the currency. Oh, good. Now I'm at -2 points. So you can keep pushing and flipping more cards. And it's an interesting game. I had almost no cards on my end at all. So it was a pathetic score, but it was neat.
Yeah. It keeps you interested too because you're watching each player's turn in case I might get money each turn. So
yeah, you're involved in each one. So for sure.
Yeah, that was my number 5.
Your number 5. Perfect. So my number 4 is Le Havre, the inland port. And that one was published in 2012. It's a U. Rosenberg game, and it was published by Lookout Game. Now, I have never played Le Havre, base, like the main game.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the Inland Port is the 2-player version. So I don't know how it compares. I've played the Inland Port. It's funny, my brother had it, and he's like, I don't know if we like this one. It plays too long. Here, you take it. And then I had it forever. But he's kind of like, it's so complicated to play. So I was like, oh, no, I don't think I want to play it. So I kind of held back for it. And then finally me and Lee sat down and played it. It was so good.
Yeah.
It was so good. And each player have their own little rondelle thing. And each round, you move the arm up or backwards. I think it goes like counterclockwise. And like, so at the beginning of the round, there's new buildings that comes up, and you can purchase those buildings. And you have the resources that you can spend to purchase the building. And the way that the resource are like kind of tracked is interesting as well, because you have like this grid, and you have these little cubes that reflects each resources. And if you spend 1, you move the cube to the left. If you spend 3, you can move the cube down 1 level. If you spend 4, you would go down 1 level and to the left. So that would be 3, then 1, so for 4. But if you ever move like all the way down to the bottom row, then you can't move down for 3. You'd have to move back 3. And like, it has an interesting mechanism just for managing the resources that you have. But then you're purchasing these buildings, and when you purchase a building, it goes just in front of where your arm is in your rondelle. And that's at the purchase level, so it's kind of, the action isn't worth all that much. But every round you move your arm back, so the building doesn't move, the arm does, and then all of a sudden it's sitting like so many spaces away from the arm, so that building now performs more. And you keep going, and then it performs more. Now, ideally, like if you get the arm almost all the way to the building before you activate that building, you can do a lot of it with it. So it's going to be at its most optimal action. So you're kind of waiting to do that. If the building ever reaches the arm, you're forced to, and you didn't use it, you're forced to sell it at half its value. And ideally, you don't want to do that because the buildings are worth points at the end. So you're trying to accumulate the buildings in this rondelle and have them and manage them. And when you use the building, it resets it back to just the left of the arm again. So it kind of goes back to that neutral spot. And you kind of, the arm starts activating it. So you want to try to get it and push for it to kind of get as close to the arm on the other side so it becomes the most optimal action. But the trick is, if you don't, like if you're waiting for it to become more powerful, the other player can activate your own buildings as well on your rondelle. And it's like, oh my God, what did you do?
I was saving.
And I was like, oh shoot, I should have used it last round. Like, and it's so interesting. It is so interesting. For this one, I love this game. Like it was so neat. The resource management, the way, because you're, and like some of the action be like, you can move your resource up 1, that gives you 3, or, you know, like, so you're trying to move your resource. So that's at its most optimal, and trying to get the buildings and move them. And it's neat. Yeah, I love this one. It's a fun one. And trying to like, hey, I don't think Lee's gonna go for it, so I'm gonna push and leave it so I can use it next round. And I think that is like, and then he uses it. No, so good. Oh my God, I like this game.
Yeah, it's good. Oh, so if you like this one, you will love Le Havre.
Oh, see, and I gotta get Le Havre. Yeah, I want to try it.
You have to try it. I have it. We'll have to try it. It's really
perfect. Yep. So that was my number 4, Le Havre, the
Inland Port. All right, my number 4 is Lost Expedition, The Lost Expedition by Pierre Sylvester, made in 2017. This one is can be played cooperative or competitive or solo. We usually play it cooperative. So what you do is you have a handful of cards, and you start with 3 explorers that each have 3 health. I think 3 or 4 health they start with. Then you have this path at the top with, I think, 9 cards, and you start with your meeple at the first card, and you're trying to get it to the end. So if you can get that meeple to the end, basically, of this big long trek that they're trying to get to, then you win the game. Now, so you play your cards one at a time, and they all have a number on the bottom. So they will be ordered after they're all played out. So I might play a card that says it has different options on the card. They all have different options. There's a red, a blue, and a yellow, I believe. So the red is mandatory. The blue, I think you get to choose. The yellow maybe you get to choose, and the blue is optional. So each of these little spots of the colors on the card are going to give you some terrible things and some good things. So you might lose 1 health, but then you're going to gain a food, or you might lose 2 health and you're going to get to move on that trek on the top. So the most important ones are you're trying to move. So you'll do almost anything possible to try and move your little meeple so that you can get through the jungle. But each card you play, like I might play one that says 26 on the bottom, and then the next player will play one that's 22. So that one's going to go ahead of that one. And they're all going to go in a line. There's also things that will skip other cards. So when you see a skip is played on a card, then you might put like a terrible card in front of it because it'll be completely skipped. There's also ones that will make you add more cards to the expedition that day, which you don't know what's going to come up, because you could pull up a card that is just an awful card and it's like a tarantula bite, injures everybody in the camp, or it could be something where you found this bag of fresh food or dry food or something. It's just a really neat, stressful game because you're playing these cards trying to line up the best scenario possible. So that's the daytime. And then the second part of the day is you play nighttime. And that one you just play cards. I'll play one card, the next player will play a card, and they either put it to the left or the right of my card. So the numbers don't matter at the bottom, but you're just still trying to play them in an order that will actually work out and benefit you in the end. So once one of your 3 explorers loses all their health, they die. As long as you have one alive at the end and you get to the end of the trek, then you do win. It is a really thinky game because you're trying to figure out, okay, if I play this card, that's going to skip this one, but then this one's going to come up, and do I play another one that could add another card, which could be something actually terrible, or do I just play something safe and save these harder cards for tomorrow or at nighttime? It's a real heart pumping game because you're trying to figure out, oh, I don't want to screw this up, and then you play a card and it just messes everything up that you had all lined up. It's really fun though. Have you played this one?
I haven't.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, it
fun.
Sounds interesting for sure.
It's neat. That's my number 4, Lost Expedition.
Perfect. So my number 3 is Camel Up, and it was published in 2018 by Stefan Bogen, and it's published by Eggert Spiel. And the Camel Up is a camel racing game, and you have this little pyramid thing that the dice are on, and you kind of push a button and a dice comes out, and then whatever color dice comes out, that's the camel that will move forward. And you're racing and betting on these camels, trying to win. And the thing is, like, you can bid on which camel you think is going to win and which camel you think is going to lose. And the sooner you bid, the more value your bid's going to have. But the more likely that the race might change up, right? And then if you've used up the card that shows that because you secretly bid, like you say, you have your hands of cards with the camels. Okay, I'm going to put this one here because I'm bidding that this one's going to win. So you put it in the win bid pile. And then, or it's like, okay, well, I'm bidding that this one's going to lose. And I played this one the first time. I bid my lose camel fairly quick because yellow was always like all the way at the back. And it was so far back. Well, not only did I not lose, he won. And because I used that camel in the too soon in the lost pile, I can't add it to the win pile, so I can't win the bid for the win pile. And it's like, say, so you kind of like, okay, that's going to be worth more if you put it in and you're right, but if you're wrong, it's just negative points. But if you're like that wrong, you can't even participate in the positive pile. So it was interesting. It's such a neat game. The whole concept, like the board that you open it up with the pop-up palm trees, it's gorgeous. And it's a fun game. And then like when the camel jumps on top of one, and then the blue one, like the yellow jumps on top of a blue one, the blue one moves, well, he carries the yellow ahead as well. And then you have a couple camels that are going backwards. So if they ever jump on that and they move backwards, so then the game can change, like the race can change fairly quickly, but it's kind of like, hey, like, okay, we're like getting closer. I think it's getting clear that, purple's going to win. So, but if you waited too long and other people have already bid on purple, so it's an interesting one. It's one that plays great at a high player count as well. So it's a fun game. And that's my number 3, Camel.
Yeah, good choice. My number 3 is Biblios by Steve Finn, made in 2007. This is a card game where it's made up of 2 phases. The first phase, all you're doing is flipping a card and deciding, do I keep this card or do I give it to a player or do I put it in the auction pile? Now, you'll either get coins, so it's, I think, from 1 to 3, or you'll get different colors of goods, which you're trying to collect, basically, at the end, trying to have the most of certain colors of goods. Books, that's right. So you'll have 4 dice that are set at certain totals, and I think they all start at 3. And what you're trying to do is manipulate those dice, because there are cards that will allow you to up the dice one or lower the dice one. So if you have a bunch of blue books, you will try to, if you can get one of the cards that will help you manipulate the dice, you'll flip that dice up to 4, because those will be worth 4 at the end. Or you'll get 4 points if you have the most of that color. The neat thing is, after you do that auction, you get all those cards out, so you'll all have this hand of cards. In the second phase, all the cards that were left in that auction are going to get flipped, and you're going to be bidding on them. So you might flip a coin, like a 3, if you had a 3, and then you'll go around and bid how many cards you want to pay for that 3 coins. You'll go around, and if nobody purchased that, it just goes away. But once a book gets flipped, then you have to bid coins on that card, and you don't get change. So if you have a whole bunch of 3s in your hand and you bid 1 and nobody wants that book, you have to pay that 3 and it's gone. So the other thing is, if those cards come up that let you manipulate the dice, you bid on those as well. And those are the big ones in the second round, because you really want to change the dice to either help you, or if you know somebody has a whole bunch of red or something, you want to get that dice as low as possible so that they're not going to get any points. The scoring is quite easy at the end. You just look at your cards, and whoever has the most will get that dice. It's a fun little auction bidding game that I think I've only played with 2. I would love to try that one with more people. Have you played Biblios?
Yeah, I have. I own Biblios. I've played it a few times. Yeah, like at the different player count. It's neat. It is interesting. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that building one where you're buying. Geez, what is it called now? Where you're buying the properties that starts from the cardboard box too. For sale. For sale. That's right. Yeah. So it has a bit of that type of play,
because you're using the cards that you get at the beginning to bid for the other.
The Biblios game dice are so neat, because they're like deep, rich colored dice, and they're big dice, and I was so excited. And you never rolled them.
Yeah, I know.
And I was like, oh, you don't even roll the dice.
That's hard, because I love rolling dice.
Oh, and it's such a neat, big, chunky dice. But yeah, no, it's a great game. That's a great pick.
Yeah, that's my number 3.
Perfect. So for my number 2, I've picked Thebes. Thebes was published in 2007 by Peter Prince, and it's published by Queen's Game. And Thebes is basically the Indiana Jones movie. You start basically like in Europe, and you're going from location to location acquiring knowledge on these different old civilization. And the more knowledge you have, the better it's going to be when you decide to go. So you're going around, and it's neat because if you travel 2 cities away or 3 cities away, the further you travel, the more time it's going to take you. And it has a really neat time mechanism on there. So be like, okay, I'm going to travel this, and I'm going to study this subject, because you got the cards of what's kind of available at the different locations. So I'm going to go there, and I'm going to study that subject, so I get 2 knowledge on this civilization, or Egypt, let's say. And then but then you got to spend time to travel and the time to learn the subject. So now you're moving your guy up 5 weeks, and whoever goes next is whoever's the furthest down on the time track. So then the next person would go, is like, okay, well, he's the last on the time track, so then he gets to go next. Is like, well, I'm going to move just to the next city and learn this one information on this other civilization. So he only moves up 2 weeks, so then it's his turn again, because he's still behind in the time track until he catches up to you. And you're doing that, acquiring the knowledge, and then eventually you're going to travel further down. Let's say you travel down to Egypt, and now you're going to a dig site, and you're going to dig for old Egyptian treasures. So the more knowledge you have, the more, like, and you have this little dial that kind of be like, okay, well, this is how much knowledge I have, and this is how much time I'm going to spend on the dig, so I can pull 10 tokens out of the bag. So the more knowledge you have, the more powerful your dig's going to be, because you have a better idea of where exactly you should be digging, right? So your knowledge is more, gives you better information as to where you need to dig. And the longer you dig, then the more you can kind of uncover as well. So then the more tokens you get to dig as well. So then let's say I go to Egypt. Now, you got to have a permit for that. So you spend the permit to go to Egypt. You can't dig there again this year because you've spent the permit for it. So you want to make it count each year. And then, so now I go in there, and I can pull 10 tokens out of the bag. So you got the bag. Most of it is sand, but there's some artifacts in there. So, and then the different artifacts are going to be worth different points. And there's always the one on the top for the first player who gets there. So you get to take that one. Okay, good. I have this one. Now I'm going to dig. And it's like, maybe I'm going all in. Now I'm going to stay there like 10 weeks. So you get a lot more tokens you can pull out of the bag, but you've moved on that time track so far ahead that the other players get the chance to do a bunch of other things until you get to catch up again. And then you pull out the dig, and then maybe you pull 8 sands and only 2 artifacts, but one of the artifacts pretty good, so it's not so bad. And then the next person that goes on that site, now you've started pulling out some of the artifacts, so there's going to be a lot more sand to artifact ratio going forward in the game. Like, it's so thematic, it's so neat. And trying to decide, okay, do I push and be like, I've got a fair bit of knowledge, I'm only going to dig 4 weeks and hopefully I pull something good? Or like, do I play it safe and dig longer so I can pull out more tokens, but then I'm going to be so far ahead on the time track that I might not get to take a turn for a while, and they might catch up on other things? Like, it's a neat kind of give and take, like, how far do you push on, but it's so neat. It's so thematic. This game is amazing. And there's like 5 or 6 different dig sites that you can go to. And, and sometimes you go in there and you pull and you look at your tokens and it's all sand. You pulled nothing. Like, it's neat. It's such a neat, interesting game. And depending on how many players, like, if you're playing for 3 years or 2.5 years, or it's neat. So that's my number 2, Thebes.
I'll have to try that one.
Mm-hmm.
That was your number 2. My number 2 is Canopy by Tim Eisner. It's a new one in 2021. This is a card game, but it's all about a tropical forest. So you will each you'll start with a tree stump, basically. And there'll be 3 rows of cards. So you will get to look at the first card, and if you want that card, you can take it. If you want to pass, you flip that card down, add another one to that row, and then look at the next one. And then you'll keep going up to the third one. If you look at the third pile and you still don't like what you see, you get to just grab one off the top. So what you're trying to do is build up your tableau. You're trying to build your trees as high as you can with the most points you can. If you ever get a top of a tree, then the canopy, you have to put it on top of the tree stump that you already have. So it might have slowed down your growing. So you might only have 2 in the middle and then the top. The other part of the cards are there's different animals that can give you certain points at the end of the game. There's different plants that is part of a set collection part of the game. Then there's also things that could happen that you'll get a card that would cause a fire in your little forest that would make you give up a plant or an animal at the end of the round. So you play, I think it's 4 rounds, 3 or 4 rounds. At the end of each round, once you've gone through the deck the first time, you will each look at your tableau and score. So you might have so many different plants, they'll give you a certain amount of points for set collection. You will add up your trees and how much they all collected. Also, whoever has the highest points for one tree each round will get this little point card that gives you a big amount of points. And then the ones that are like, if you have a fire or a drought, depending how many of those cards you got, if you only have 1, nothing will happen. If you have 2, you will lose a card. But if you have 3 cards, then you and the other person will also lose a card as well. And sometimes it's good to lose cards because some of the plant set collections, if you have, say, 3 of one card, it'll give you so many points. But if you have 4, you go back down to 0. So sometimes you do want to lose some of these cards just to get bigger points. It's such a pretty game. The art in this is so nice. The animals, the plants, everything. It's just beautiful. I didn't get the Kickstarter version. It had little wooden point tokens and other little upgrades that were really nice. But even just the base game is so pretty and nice, and just pushing your luck, trying to see which pile do I want to leave for my partner over there because I know they're collecting all those. Do I just take them so that they don't get all those points, or do I just dig for better stuff for myself? It's really, really fun little pretty game. Canopy, that's my number 2.
That sounds neat. And then like that picking card and moving on to the next, really sounds like the Sea of Clouds.
Oh, is that mechanism in there?
That's how it works as well.
Yeah,
like you
I like that.
Do you want that, or do you leave that pile and go to the next one? Yeah, so it's neat.
And you know what's in it, but then you add another card for the next person. So, yeah,
exactly. So that's interesting. And that was your number 2.
Yep.
So my number 1 is Mystic Vale. It was published in 2016 by John D. Clare, and AEG is the publisher. Now this one, they've just released like a new version of it called Mystic Vale Essential, and basically has the base game with the first 3 expansions. And I want it. I have Mystic Vale. It's like if I want to spend $80 to upgrade the copy of a game that I have that is already a good. Anyway, I'm in a whole conundrum over this one here.
Me
but this
too.
is
Exactly.
Such a great game.
Yeah.
And it's a card crafting game. So you have 20 cards that are like sleeved, and as you play, you're going to be flipping cards over, and some of them have that little the blue circle that's what's mana or something, and that's what you're collecting that you're going to spend to acquire new cards. But there's also going to have some cards that have a decay symbol on it, and it's like a red symbol on it. And if you ever reveal, and what's happened, like you have your deck of card and you flip one over and it's in staging, and you decide whether you want to add it to your hand or leave it there. And so you would move it to your hand, and you flip the next one, and then you would move it to your hand, and it's the next one, and you have your first decay. Okay, that's fine. You move it to the next one, and you'll flip, and now you get your second decay. Okay, well, and if you ever reveal, it's like I think it's 3 decay. Like you can't have more than 2 in your hand, because then you bust and you get nothing this round. And so you're kind of trying to like, oh, darn, but I don't have as much mana as I was hoping for. Maybe I won't get another decay. It's like, okay, I will add this in my hand, flip it over. Oh, darn it, there's another decay. So then you do nothing. It's like, oh, good, there was nothing there. And then you buy these cards, and they're all transparent plastic cards, and you add them to the sleeves of the cards you have in your hand right now, and they add extra abilities to your cards. So slowly, as you play the game, your cards become more and more powerful, and they'll maybe give you more mana, or they'll give you the green symbol that cancels a decay, or they'll give you abilities to collect points as you go, or they'll be worth points, and it's so neat. And then some will have like element symbols on it. So then those ones will allow you to trade those element symbols or use those element symbols to purchase other cards that either going to give you extra abilities or just going to be worth points. And these ones are just regular cards. They're not see-through, and you're collecting these as well. And you're going around until you've kind of used up all the, because you start with a certain amount of points in the middle that you're collecting. And once that's depleted, then it triggers the end of the game, and you kind of keep going, and whoever has the most point is the winner. Such a great game. It's so neat. It's I think I really want the Mystic Vale Essential now.
Me too. And I already do have one expansion in my box, but
see, and I'm not big on expansions. I don't know, but this is one that I wanted expansion for. I haven't purchased any yet, and this one I was like, oh, they have it at Pandora's Box, which is my local game store here, for like $80, and I was like, do I do it? Do I do it? I'm probably gonna do it. Yeah. Now that I'm talking about it and how great a game it is, darn it.
Well, you can sell the one you have.
There you go. Hey, everybody,
so it won't actually be $80
for sale. So look me up.
Yeah.
If you want to buy it.
I may have one for sale as well.
So Mystic Vale is my number one game for Push Your Luck.
Yeah, very good. My number one is a game I can't get enough of lately. It's called Dice Miner. It's from Joshua Debony and Nicola Pedriz, I think that's how you say it. Anyway, it was made in 2021, and it's a dice chucker. So all you're doing is taking these dice off this mountain. So there's this little cardboard or plastic mountain, if you had a Kickstarter, that all these dice are kind of built up on. And you can only take from the top of the mountain. So you take one dice on your turn and just put it in front of you. You go around the table, you each will take a dice. Now, if you happen to have a beer on a dice, you will roll that beer to somebody, and that dice will be theirs, and you can take 2 dice. So you can take it off the top or the side of the mountain. The whole point of taking these dice is you're just trying to get the most points possible. There's different ways of scoring these points. You could have the white dice, which are just basic dice with numbers 1 to 6 on them, or 1 to 5, and then the 6th one is a beer on the side. So you're trying to get sets of 1 to 5, and you always have to start with 1. If you end up with just a 4, 5, 6, it's worth nothing. You have to start with 1 and go 2, 3, 4, 5, and those are the only way it'll count. The other dice is there's these blue ones, and they're magic dice. So they'll have 1, 2, or 3 little magic symbols on them. And those you'll want because at the end of the round, you can use those to re-roll some of the dice you already have. So if you say have no 1s and you need a 1 really bad, you can roll some of your white dice. Hopefully get a 1 so that you can get a set. There's also these black dice that either show these little, they look like comets, but I think they're explosion like dynamite, or they have dragons on them. And they'll either have 2, 3, or 4 little comets or dragons on them. And if you get those dice, those are negative. But if you happen to get this green dice that is either flipped to a shield and you have dragons, then those will be positive points. And if you have one of the green dice that shows little shovels, those will be positive points for the little comet looking things that are on your dice. The other dice are these yellow ones, and these are just basically gems. So you either get 1, 2, or 3, and those are just straight points. So you're just trying to peel off these dice and try to make the best sets possible. If you happen to get more shields or shovels, those will double or triple the amount of dragons or little comets that you have in there. And it's just a fun game because you get all these beer and then you're giving them to people, but then you get to take 2 dice. So at the end of the round, once you have all your dice and you've done the magic phase, you've re-rolled as many as you possibly can with your magic dice, then you'll score up your points. Then, right after that, you will roll all those dice that you have, leave them in your tableau, set up the mountain again, and pick new dice. So all the dice that you had from the first round, they stay there, and they're added to the points for the second round. It's just a really fun little dice chucker that you just keep adding points, and each round it just multiplies and multiplies. And at the end of 3 rounds, the winner with you total up all 3 rounds, whoever has the most wins. Such a simple concept, but just love it so much. I'm so into the dice games. Cool. Yeah, it's really neat. I didn't think I would like it that much, but I kept seeing it on different reviews and stuff, and I thought, I might like this game, and I just love it. It's one of my favorites right now.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my number 1. So that's it for our Push Your Luck games. Next week, we are going to talk about word games. There's tons of those. That's going to be a tricky list. But
yes,
I love my word games.
I'm a big fan of word games, but my family, not so much.
No?
No. Well, then I destroy them, depending on the game. So, but yeah, no, I'm excited for that list as well.
That'll be good. I love it because my family likes word games. My gamer friends like word games. And my non-gamer friends that like games, they like word games. So those get played a lot. Love
nice.
It. Yeah. So where can we find you?
So I am on Facebook. My Facebook group is Disbury and Area is Playing All the Games. I am also on Instagram as Boardgame_Mama. And my YouTube channel is Boardgame Mama. And how about you, Carla? Where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram at Boardgame Specialist, just one word. And also have a Facebook page, Red Deer Board Game Fanatics. That's it for me. So we will see you next time on the Board Game Specialist. Bye for now.
Bye.